COVID cases are increasing. Deaths have surpassed the 1,000 mark in the country. People who have experienced or have contracted the virus would not want to go through, especially those who have recovered it, go through the same process. Voices are being heard, but are they listened to? That's the question. The first family were also not spared from the virus as they the First Lady and the President contracted the virus on the 26th of May and were in isolation and just recently got out. First Lady gets candid about the road to recovery. Madam Geingos, always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks, Blanche.
Well, when you were given the results by your doctor that you and your husband tested positive for COVID-19, what went through your mind at that moment?
So we got our results very late in the morning. You'll notice that State House released the press release about our positive status around 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. That was exactly 2 hours after we got them. So we got it about 1:30, and President's first reaction is that we must be transparent. I think he is very clear about being transparent at all times. So he immediately called Hengari at 1:30 in the morning and said, Hengari, this is what happened, you need to release. Poor Hengari was still shocked, but President was very calm the whole time. And I don't know what he was thinking, but I certainly know what I was thinking. President is high risk, and I had lots of thoughts going through my mind at that point. And like everybody else, when they first told they COVID and when they know they have underlying conditions, the first thing that sets in is anxiety. Because COVID is like Russian roulette. You don't know who it's going to take and who it's going to spare. So I will admit to feeling very anxious, both about myself and about my husband.
And during the conversations, what was his reaction? Like, what should Dr. Hengari say in the press statement to the Namibian nation?
So at that time we were still feeling very strong. We were effectively asymptomatic at that point. President does tend to have a little bit of a cough, especially during winter, so we thought nothing of it, nor was it very far gone. The reasons we also tested isn't because we had symptoms, but I remember feeling very fatigued, but I wasn't surprised because I had worked out that morning. I had a very busy weekend, so it was a normal feeling for me of being fatigued. But his doctor was there, and we did mention, look, we both feel a little bit fatigued, we feel a bit funny, we don't know what it is. So the doctor said, let's not take chances, let's just test for the sake of being thorough. So we were shocked that we got COVID. But Blanche, the strangest feeling, you have a feeling of almost disappointment in yourself and almost wondering, what did I do wrong? And I raised this point because I certainly felt some form of disappointment in myself, because the first thing I thought is, did I bring this and give it to my husband who's high risk? And I raise this because I'm seeing a very dangerous trend of families blaming each other.
Yes.
You are the one who brought COVID. Now imagine the burden of somebody living for the rest of their lives thinking, I am the reason my husband died, or my wife died, or my child died, or my parents died. And this blame game is not only happening at family level, it's happening at societal level, and it's happening at political level. And we need to stop the blame game, because right now we're in crisis. Now is not the time for I told you so, it's your fault. Now is the time for what are the solutions, what can I do?
Before the media release that shocked us all, the President had attended the Central Committee meeting, and there were also questions whether he might have picked it up there and brought it home to you and your children. So did he also question himself?
We all questioned
like
ourselves, but we also all agreed amongst one another, we're not going to do this. We're not going to blame each other. It's a public health crisis. A virus doesn't have somebody's name on it. Should we then say, who could have infected President or who could have infected me? How far do you want to go? We contracted a virus that is highly transmissible, that everybody is contracting. We are not special. We took the precautions that we could. We got it. We are here now. How do we deal with it? Because going back to see who can we blame, I don't know what it will do. Because one of the things that the doctors mentioned, especially about President's demeanor, is that stress, anxiety, panic is not good for you when you have COVID. People who are depressed, who are feeling lonely, who are feeling anxious, are taking longer to recover. So it's so important for us to keep a positive mindset while we are sick, because it's a critical part of your survival and recovery.
And that's where I was getting to. From the 26th of May to now, the recovery process, how has it been?
It's been good. Initially, the first 2 days, we had so many people praying for us, calling us, texting us. And I really want to encourage the Namibian nation, when you know somebody is not feeling well, send them a message. That encouragement is really helpful. We had pastors sending us voice notes, praying for us, and that was so spiritually strong for us. I really appreciate it. So the first day when I realized we are through this, I said that it was the prayer that helped. But then I realized that's such a selfish comment to make, because other people who have passed also prayed. So prayer is important. I certainly feel it helped us, but prayer alone isn't enough. There are many other things that you must do, but what we also remember, Blanche, COVID isn't a disease that says if you steam or you use this medication, you're going to survive. That's not how COVID works. There is no treatment for COVID. There isn't a right or a wrong thing that you can do. I think the most important thing that you can do is to test early, because the earlier you test, the more effective whatever you take will be for your system, and obviously to vaccinate.
Now, before we get to the vaccination part, Madam Geingos, just a day within the recovery process, what were you doing, you and your husband?
Once we recovered?
No, during the recovery process.
So
you would wake up in the morning and...
So, okay, so our morning didn't change. President was on his phone almost constantly, dealing with whatever presidents do. He was talking a lot to other heads of states. He was liaising a lot with the Minister of Health and other ministers on unrelated issues. He was in contact with his office the whole time. And frankly, sorry Hage, I don't think that was the right thing, because he must rest, and he didn't rest. He didn't rest for a second. And maybe that was good, because being busy kept him focused away from what would happen, what could happen. So we spent a lot of time together. We were in self-isolation together. And we basically did some work. I was very fatigued, so I slept a lot. And so there's certain days. Day 4, day 5 is very important. And then day 8, day 9 is critical, because many people fall very sick on day 8, day 9 from the first time that they got symptoms. So we were waiting for that day 8, day 9, but we knew what our day 8, day 9 was, because we acted almost immediately. If you take too long, if you've had symptoms for a long time, by the time you test and you have your results, you're probably already at day 8 and day 9. So we spent the day doing almost what we always do, and both of us had relatively mild symptoms, and President's symptoms were milder than mine. I lost my sense of taste and smell. He didn't. Initially, he had a very slight cough. He had a slight fever, and he was grumpy. But I don't know if that's COVID or if he's always grumpy. So maybe just slight cough and the slight fever. I had loss of taste, I had slight fever, and I had very bad fatigue. And I feel I had anxiety, because there were lots of things I was concerned about. And that anxiety, and we dealt with lots of healthcare workers, and they certainly made us feel better, but I did think about their mental health. Yeah. I think that's the next crisis. It's mental health. I think there's going to be a mental health crisis, because we all worried about finances. We're worried about our health. Some of us are dealing with grief from losing loved ones. We lost the president's brother a month and a half ago. So I think as we stress about COVID, we're not dealing with all the other things that we're worried about. And I'm worried about the mental health crisis.
Madam Geingos, you and your husband are carrying, if I'm to put it like it now, the health of the nation, that's now economy-wise, health-wise, and everything else on your shoulders. Yesterday or the day before, your husband announced a lockdown for the 3 areas, local authority areas considered to be the hotspots currently. However, there's a sense of change in opinions when it comes to the lockdowns. Those who were calling for it and those who were against it. But then again, those who are calling for it now, among the crowd, one can notice that there are people who were initially against lockdowns. They have their reasons. So just your opinion on that.
I think the public health measures were absolutely correct. And I think they are well considered. And the reason I think that, Blanche, is your statistics that you see today are not people who got infected today. The people dying today are not people who got infected today. What we see today is what was happening 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago. What Dr. Kandetu is telling me from the Ministry of Health is that our fatality rate is 1.6%. So let's put that in practical terms. It means that likely in the next 3 weeks, just from yesterday, we're going to lose 33 lives. 33 lives. Today's statistics will likely be similar. So from today and the next 3 weeks, that's another 33 lives. So the lives we're losing yesterday, the 30 lives we lost yesterday, was the COVID of 3 weeks ago, because it takes you on average 3 weeks before somebody who contracts COVID passes away. Other people die very early in the disease life cycle, but on average it's 3 weeks. So my message to people is, if our fertility rate is 1.6% and the world average is 2.5%, it means that 98.4% of us who get COVID are going to survive. So that should help us deal with our anxiety. Mm-hmm. It does not mean that when you contract COVID, you're going to die. 98.4% of us are going to survive. But 1.6% isn't a statistic. It's people we love. It's my brother-in-law. It was almost my parents. It's a very good friend of mine who passed away 2 days ago. It could be your family members, your friends. All of us have been affected. So the 30 people who died yesterday are loved ones. The 30 people who are going to die today are loved ones. And in the next 3 weeks, it's not just a number. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying it's an irrelevant number, but we must look at the number in context. 98.4% of us will survive. But we must be mindful of the 1.6 who are not. The only way we can do this is by respecting the lockdown regulations, because the virus doesn't move on its own. It's moved by people. We need to stay at home if we can. We need to take the precautions that have been asked of us. But most importantly, Blanche, we must vaccinate.
Mm-hmm. Now, Madam Geingos, earlier I said voices are out there, but are they listened to? So many of us have become medical experts, doctors, and everything else, sharing types of concoction for one to take all the precautions. Yes. That's now on top of the government health protocols. So as an influential voice, and you've observed the trends, especially among the young people, that they are being reckless or just being careless. So
we must trust the science. I'm very impressed with civil society organizations like IPPR. I've seen private sector organizations like the First National Bank of Namibia, who are aggressively pushing out the right information on COVID and on vaccines and treatment. And I think more CSOs, more private sector organizations must do exactly that. So I know very influential people who are playing a fantastic role, and organizations, But I also know influential people who are not, who are spreading misinformation, who are in this conspiracy of the chips in the vaccine. I even know there's a few religious leaders who are doing this. And at this point, I understand somebody who has fears, for instance, about the side effects of vaccine. It's a reasonable fear. But with any reasonable fear, there's a reasonable expectation that you will inform yourself about it. There's a ministerial number, 0800 100 100. Call that number. Get the right information on vaccination. Because I'm not sure why we're so quick to believe misinformation and so reluctant to find the right information. Every time I switch on the radio, there's somebody talking about vaccines. Let us switch on our radios. Let us call 0800 100 100. Get the information from the toll-free line of the Ministry of Health. Let's ask people who are informed. Because personally, I agree, Dr. Kandetu, Dr. Theoben Kandetu, and shout out to Theoben, you're doing such a fantastic job together with all the other doctors who are assisting there in the response team. But he has a feeling that people who are spreading misinformation are criminals. And the law actually says that. There's a Regulation 28 in the Public Health and Environmental Act that actually criminalizes the spread of misinformation. And I agree with Dr. Kandetu. It is criminal conduct. Because as a thief steals our property, those who are spreading misinformation are stealing lives. People are believing this stuff. And it makes me so angry, Blanche. The situation, I think, is the worst that we've ever seen. And the numbers that we're seeing are people we love. And love protects. Love does not go out irresponsibly and comes home and makes other people sick. Love protects. If we need to stay at home for the next 2-3 weeks, not go out drinking, not go out with friends, not be out braaiing, that's what we have to do, because that is the price of love. That's the first message. Second message, let us not attribute blame to one another when somebody contracts the virus. Let us rather behave ourselves, because you'll live with that burden for the rest of your life, all because you wanted to have an hour or 2 hours of fun with your friends. Third message, please vaccinate. Please vaccinate. The vaccination isn't about the third wave. The vaccination is about healthcare workers who are overwhelmed, hospitals that are overwhelmed, and the science is clear. Vaccinations stops hospitalizations and death. The science is clear. We must believe the science. Scientists are the Lord's children. They're using their gift to come up with these scientific formulas. Let us trust the science. It is not incompatible with our religion. So let us please vaccinate. And the last thing, we need to be kinder to each other. Everybody's in crisis. We are all anxious. And we must all be kinder to each other. There's a lot of cruelty. I've seen the best and the worst of people in this moment. And this nation is better than the worst of a few elements. We are better than that. Let us be kinder to each other, support each other, reach out, pray for each other. If your neighbor is ill and they are living alone, help them. We cannot have people dying alone. Give them medication if you can afford it. Because COVID is also a disease of inequality, where those who have more access to resources, or it's easier for them to get pharmaceuticals, medication, and treatment. It shouldn't be like that.